Some folks might have been concerned about Miami heading north to Pittsburgh and facing some bad weather, but instead they faced some really mean-spirited play on defense and bad boy at quarterback, that freshman in Kenny Pickett, as Pitt pulls off the upset over Miami 24-14. And yes, the Pitt Panthers have not looked good hardly at all this year, but they have played better recently. Most notably on the road against Virginia Tech last week, 1 yard away from upsetting the Hokies and losing that game just by 6 points. And it came out early in which this would look like a defensive struggle. And before I move on with the analysis, please join me here on Mark Rogers TV for college football coverage 24/7, 365 as we do it up each and every weekend, every day with college football analysis. Okay, true freshman quarterback Kenny Pickett. What do we know about this kid? Well, he was the 33rd rated pro-style quarterback, according to 247 Sports out of New Jersey. And after showing a few jitters on the first few series, he played extremely well. 18 of 29, made the right decisions, got flush from the pocket consistently, and made really good throws on the run. Also showed that he could make some plays with his legs, not just because he has tremendous speed, but he's got tremendous savvy in the open field, and he actually knocked back some Miami Hurricanes on this day. The Pitt defensive line has been underwhelming all season. 7 sacks for the entire season coming into this game. But Dwayne Hendricks with a big sack early on of Malik Rozier. That set up the punt in the short field at the Miami 40. That got Pitt on the scoreboard at 3-0, courtesy Alex Kessman. Kadri Henderson has been a force on the jet sweep for the last 2 to 4 years in college football, maybe the best at running the jet sweep. Kadri Henderson had 4 carries for 23 yards and really got the Pitt offense moving via the jet sweep, which is difficult to consider anyone beating these Miami defenders to the corner, but Pitt was able to get the offense moving with Kadri Henderson right there, 4 for carries for 23 yards. Okay, the turnover chain got going on a bad snap by the Pitt center. Pickett couldn't handle the snap. It was way over his head. Michael Pinckney tracked it down for the fumble recovery. Out comes the turnover chain, and nothing happened, though. The Pitt defense stood tall against Malik Rozier. So much has been made. We've talked about it here many times about Miami's third down efficiency. Despite all the things going right, both offensively and defensively for this team, the offense has thrived on the big play to Christopher Herndon or Daryl Langham, or in recent weeks to Jeff Thomas for several of his touchdowns. And of course, Amon Richards, plagued by injuries, has factored into it a little bit. But another difficult time converting on third down. 4 for 14 for the Canes on this day. Amon Richards did come through with a 23-yard touchdown in which he made a great adjustment to the football. It was the back shoulder throw close to the pylon, and he got it into the end zone, stretching out. And Miami did lead at 7-3. So despite all the offensive struggles to that point, the defense was playing very well. Pitt was doing a little bit between the 20s, but not much, and it was 7-3. Okay, the turnover chain pops back up, and Jaquan Johnson with a fumble recovery, and Miami's in business, but Rozier continues to miss throws. So Miami gets 2 turnovers in the first half, and neither result in points. That's not been the equation all season. The turnovers have spurred on and given momentum to the offense, and they have converted into points. Zach Fiegels had some issues punting the football. He had a 13-yard punt that set up the scoring drive for Pitt. It was a 13-yard punt from midfield. Pitt gets the ball at the 35, and they moved it for the touchdown. Pickett, in particular, we talked about his running, and I took note of one run in particular in which he eluded Shaq Quarterman at midfield, and then he lowered the boom on Malik Young. And so the freshman quarterback, who we would expect is going to fill out a little bit later in his career, took it to the Miami defense. So he leads the touchdown drive, and it's 10-7 at half. Okay, we come out in the second half. Malik Rozier still missing on throws. Christopher Herndon knocked out of the game after 3 catches for 41 yards. He left the game a little bit later. Travis Homer could never get going. 7 carries for 12 yards in this one, kind of reminiscent to this point of the North Carolina game on the road. North Carolina hanging around, making some plays, limiting the run. Travis Homer had his worst game rushing to date at Chapel Hill. But of course, Miami was too good, and they pulled out the big plays, and they made the big plays, and they had the opportunity to do the same thing this afternoon. The big plays were there for Malik Rozier to connect on, and he continued to miss. The Pitt offensive line on the touchdown drive, so we're picking it up at 10-7, was dominant, and that was difficult, had to be difficult for Miami fans to watch. Their defensive front has been tremendous this year, one of the top 5 defensive fronts in college football, and with Pinckney and Quarterman and company at linebacker cleaning things up, that's been the formula on defense, and a vastly improved secondary. But on Pitt's scoring drive that gave them some breathing room at 17-7, the Pitt offensive line was tremendous, and they started to give the ball to Kadri Allison. This is the kid, if you remember, who is the 2015 ACC Freshman of the Year, and he's been moved to fullback. Pat Narduzzi crediting him for being a very selfless player to go from 1,100-yard back to backup to fullback. As James Conner came back last season and took his job back. But Allison completed the drive with the shovel pass touchdown and wove through traffic, got it over the goal line, and it was 17-7. Malik Rozier looked like he was going to pull out the magic with another awful first half, but turn it into a better second half when he hit that 3rd and 15 to Christopher Herndon. Exceptional throw and catch there. Again, 3rd and 15. If you check out numbers and metrics, those are rarely converted into first downs, probably 5 to 8% of the time. Rozier makes it happen. He pulls it off, but then right after that, more misses, more tipped passes. The Pitt defensive line on a number of key situations in the second half, tipped passes, and didn't allow open Miami receivers to even see the football. All right, so we had 17-7 at that point. Pitt runs the clock. They got the ball with 9 minutes to play, and this was the drive that ultimately won the game, even though Miami had a glimmer of hope there late in the game. Pitt gets the ball with over 9 minutes left to play. It's 17-7, and they just eat up clock. And that's what was surprising to me, is that everybody in the park, everybody watching on TV knew that Pitt was just going to run it, and they did. They only threw 1 pass, and Trajan Bandy should have picked it off along the left sideline. Well, they actually had 2 passes. They had the one that was deflected, yes, by Bandy, and completed for the first down. That was a big conversion. Other than that, Pitt ran it over and over and over and over. And with Miami knowing Pitt was going to run, with that makeshift young offensive line, Pitt drove it right down their throats, and they complete the touchdown on the improbable 4th and 5 play. So it's 17-7. Do you kick the field goal? Well, you would only be up by 2 scores and wouldn't extend it to 3 scores. So Pitt calls the timeout, gets himself in play for the 4th and 6 play, the bootleg, and Pickett takes it in for the touchdown. Looked like the game was over. 2.5 minutes left, 24-7 game. But right down the field, Braxton Berrios with a big touchdown reception from Malik Rozier, who finished, I believe, 15 of 34 for Rozier on the day. He did hit on some big ones, but nearly not enough. 187 yards passing for Rozier. And I mentioned the day by Homer, 7 carries for 12 yards. And Rozier got loose a couple times for some decent gains and converted some third downs with his legs. At one point in the game, he was 0 for 7 in trying to convert third downs passing. He only completed 1 of the 7 tosses, but that was only for 2 yards, so it didn't convert into a first down. So Miami's going to have to clean that up for Clemson next week. No question about it, but they haven't cleaned it up all season. Still one of the worst in the nation on third down. But they do get the Rozier connection to Berrios. That gives them a slim chance at 24-14. They get the onside kick recovery with Malik Young tracking it down, but they just couldn't get the job done. The strip sack by Avonte Maddox, the senior from Detroit, finishing his Pitt career at Heinz Field in front of a sparse crowd, but that has to feel extra good for him. And congratulations to the Pitt seniors who were that close to making a bowl game, but they finished at 5-7. But they get this win over Miami, 24-14, and the Canes just couldn't pull this one out. They've done it a number of times this season at North Carolina, against Georgia Tech, the two notable games in particular. And then, of course, last week, down 2 scores, 14 points to Virginia on 2 separate occasions. They closed with 30 straight points. Okay, is this the end of the world for Miami football? I couldn't believe what I heard on the broadcast near the end of the game in regards to this possibly knocking Miami out of the college football playoff. How is that possible? Okay, Miami wins next week. They're a 12-1 ACC champion. The ACC is possibly the best conference in college football. There is certainly not a distinction between conferences at this point based on what we've seen. The metrics all show that the 4 top conferences are very close. So a 12-1 is an ACC champ who just defeated the number 3 team in the country in Clemson, unless they lose to South Carolina. I can't imagine a scenario in which Miami is left out of the playoff. So this only ruins a chance for Miami. Had they defeated Pitt, won out, been 12-0, then lost a close ACC championship game, they still may have gotten into the playoff. That's what this kills. But it can't kill an ACC champion getting to the playoff. I can't imagine Miami at 12-1, just defeating Clemson to win the ACC, not getting to the playoff. Even if the Big Ten takes up a spot with Wisconsin and or Ohio State, Oklahoma wins its last 2 games to finish 12-1, and there's a spot out of the SEC. Yes, Alabama could lose to Auburn. Auburn could win the SEC and get that spot, or Georgia get the spot, the winner of the SEC championship game, and there would be much argument over Alabama still having the resume. But Miami at 12-1 is an ACC champion over Alabama 11-1. As a team that didn't even get to its conference championship game. That would be horrible for college football if the College Football Playoff Committee would opt for Alabama over Miami. That's the only way Miami gets left out of the Final Four if they beat Clemson next week. So it's still in Miami's hands. I can't imagine that they're going to be denied a playoff again if they can beat Clemson for the ACC championship. And that's going to be very difficult to do. In the meantime, Malik Rozier is going to have to get out of this 1-game slump. And it's not a extended slump. It's a 1-game slump, but he looked pretty awful today. They're going to have to find the ground game. And they're going to have to do all this against arguably the best defensive front in college football with Clelin Ferrell and Christian Wilkins and company, Austin Bryant. It's a loaded crew there with Clemson. It should be a great game. We'll see what the Tigers have tonight or tomorrow night, actually, against South Carolina in Columbia. That's going to be a challenge for them, so they need to take care of business first. For Pitt, they've got a quarterback, it appears, in freshman Billy Pickett. He played pretty well at Virginia Tech, then he comes out against Miami, and he looks exceptional leading the team, not putting up fireworks of offense or lighting up the scoreboard or the stat sheet, but he looked really good in running the offense, knowing when to break contain, knowing when to run, slings it downfield with accuracy on the run. Billy Pickett is the future for Pitt football, but of course, Pat Narduzzi is going to have to surround him with better players than what we've seen over the last couple years there at Pitt. Okay, Miami fans, tell me what you think about the performance today. I'm going to think it's not much, but it's all in front of you against Clemson in the ACC championship game. All right, Mark Rogers TV talking up Pitt and Miami with the Panthers upsetting the Canes 24-14. We'll catch you next time.